Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. I don't know about you folks, but me personally, I really enjoy a good origin story. For example, when I was younger, I saw the movie Alien and then its sequel, Aliens. And I couldn't help but to think, where in the hell did these aliens originate from? Did they have their own planet? Were they sent there on a mission? Were they created by a mad scientist? I had questions. Well, in 2012, Ridley Scott made the movie Prometheus, which was the origin story, and it answered a whole bunch of questions. Well, fast forward to today, and put the microscope on the story we're looking at, and for me it's the same deal. I've always wondered how Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell came to be. How was their relationship fostered? Who introduced them? Was it on purpose? One thing I can tell you, in my opinion, is that there was never any love in this quote-unquote relationship. I've always thought that it was a business arrangement. From the sources that I've spoke with, from the information that I've seen, I have never seen anything that would point me to them being in love with each other. In fact, all signs point to this being a business relationship. Today, Forbes has an article out talking about how Ghislaine Maxwell reportedly met Jeffrey Epstein through her pops. And now we've talked about this previously. The Sun had an article out talking about how Robert Maxwell supposedly bankrolled Jeffrey Epstein. And I've thought that for a very long time, right? I've said that for quite some time here, that it wasn't only Les Wexner giving Jeffrey Epstein money. That's absurd to think that that would be the only person that was bankrolling this. This was a vast, vast cell of people who had one goal in mind, setting up this blackmail operation. And in my opinion, Robert Maxwell laid the groundwork for it all to start before he died. I think that Robert Maxwell played a huge role in getting this off the ground, and I think he was a key component in bringing Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell together. I've said that for quite some time, and I still believe that. I have seen nothing that would change my mind and point me in the direction that Jeffrey Epstein was in love with Ghislaine Maxwell. I'm sorry, but that just does not smell like a good meal for me. All right, so let's jump in here and see what Forbes has to say about it all. Headline: Ghislaine Maxwell reportedly met Jeffrey Epstein through her disgraced father. Author, Lizette Voitko. Top line: Ghislaine Maxwell, alleged recruiter of Jeffrey Epstein's sex ring of underage girls, co-conspirator, fellow child abuser, general all-around scumbag, is awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges and reportedly met the now-dead financier, pedophile, through her father, the tabloid colossus Robert Maxwell, according to a new podcast on Epstein's dark web of abuse. And he might have been one early source of Epstein's wealth, catapulted him into the upper echelon of society. Yeah, it's rather obvious that Robert Maxwell had his pocketbook open for Jeffrey Epstein. If they were thinking about this blackmail ring, if they had this plan in place, the blueprint of it, well, all they needed were the players on the stage. And Jeffrey Epstein was the perfect candidate. He already had disgusting proclivities that were well known, and they knew that he was malleable. Enough money here, enough money there, he can be steered in the right direction. And then, for the kicker, you bring in Ghislaine Maxwell to make sure that everything runs smoothly. See how it all comes together here, folks? Key facts. According to the latest episode of Broken Seeking Justice podcast, Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell met as early as 1988 through her father, said convicted Ponzi schemer Steve Hoffenberg, who once worked with Epstein, who also claimed for the first time that Epstein and Robert Maxwell had business dealings together, although the podcast could not corroborate this. Well, there's a lot of talk about it, right? There's a lot of whispering, a lot of things being said about Robert Maxwell and his role in getting all of this off the ground. And I think we'll hear more of that as the trial gets closer, and if more people obviously are indicted, they will have a song to sing. Now, I'm not too sure if we're ever going to really be able to pinpoint the origins of this, or if we'll just be left to speculate. As of now, though, in my opinion, Robert Maxwell played a huge role at the beginning, folks, at the beginning of setting this all in motion and making sure that somebody that he could trust, a confidant, somebody that he knew understood what the goal was involved. And that somebody was his daughter, Ghislaine Maxwell. Two additional sources backed up the claim that Robert Maxwell was the person who brought his prized daughter together with Epstein, including a former Epstein staffer who was told by Ghislaine Maxwell while she forced them to look at 8 albums worth of photos from her father's funeral. Look, it's very obvious, to me anyway, that Ghislaine Maxwell learned her craft at her father's side, on the knee of her father. While you and I were growing up and our fathers were teaching us life lessons about, whatever it may be, Ghislaine's father was teaching her how to manipulate, how to scam, how to cheat, and how to plot. And those are lessons that Daddy's little girl obviously took to her black heart. Ghislaine Maxwell told the staffer that Epstein was someone who could take care of her emotionally, and was firm that his finances weren't the source of her interest, according to the podcast, which aligns with reports that the pair dated at one point and remained friends. See, there's my contention there. They might have dated as a cover, but there was no love there, in my opinion. And again, it wasn't about the money, like some people have stated, because even though Maxwell was disgraced, even though Maxwell lost a bunch of money, do you really think that the Maxwell family didn't have money squirreled away? Do you think that they were left with just nothing? I highly doubt that, folks. And I know that Ghislaine Maxwell had many, many different options, many different ways she could have went. But she ended up with Jeffrey Epstein. She ended up in that sphere. And when all of the information has come out, and when we have the benefit of hindsight, we see that not only did she end up running around with Jeffrey Epstein as some lover or a victim, as some people would like to paint her, we see the true face, and that face is Ghislaine Maxwell had a leadership role here and was a key component in getting this off of the ground. Robert Maxwell might have been a source of Epstein's wealth, according to the podcast, citing a 2010 deposition from bookkeeper Maritza Vasquez in a Florida civil lawsuit in which she says Maxwell started Epstein's money, a claim only previously reported by tabloid The Sun through an anonymous source. And it's funny that they mention, The Sun's a tabloid. Well, they might be a tabloid, and they might talk about some wild shit in other areas, but they've done a good job in this Jeffrey Epstein case. And it shows you just how much of a dumpster fire the legacy media is. They're getting scooped on the Epstein case by The Sun. Imagine that. Imagine having all the resources of the BBC or CNN or one of these other garbage outlets, and you get scooped by The Sun. Vasquez also said in the deposition that Epstein had a relationship with a woman, that her father was very wealthy, and that's how he started his own money. Of course it is. Golly. Look, so Ghislaine Maxwell was set up with Jeffrey Epstein through the intelligence version of Match.com, right? And then she was launched into his orbit, was told that she had, some funds that were at her discretion, and her and Jeffrey Epstein started laying the groundwork for this criminal enterprise, all bankrolled on the back of Robert Maxwell and whatever intelligence handlers had their palms on him at the time. My guess is the CIA. Lawyers for Maxwell did not respond to requests by Forbes to confirm how she met Epstein or if Robert Maxwell was a source of Epstein's wealth. Yeah, she's not going to, why would she talk about that right now? That would be stupid. So if anyone thinks we're going to get any context from Ghislaine Maxwell or that she's going to add anything for us, you're going to be waiting for quite some time. Critical quote. In addition to these accounts, there's also a photo snapped a mere 19 days after Robert Maxwell's death that intimately links Epstein and Ghislaine. Shot at the Plaza Hotel during a memorial event for Robert Maxwell, the picture shows Ghislaine and Epstein in conversation. Reporter Emily Saul says in the episode, wearing a blue silk jacket, Ghislaine smiles coyly at Epstein, who is seated to her right, wearing a white bow tie and an enormous grin. It doesn't look like a first date. That's because it's not a first date. See, I'm really glad that this broken podcast has come out and somebody with resources who is honorable, like Tara Palmieri, is involved. Because she's going to get to the bottom of this kind of stuff, right? She's not going to just sit by and let this shit slide. She sees it all. Everybody sees it all. The problem is the legacy media doesn't have the courage to run it, because they're still scared of these people. And in some cases, some of their faves are caught up in it. But the fact that Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, the origin story is this love affair that blossomed and then they grew apart, it's such bullshit in my opinion, okay? This was and always has been a clinical, surgically precise operation. Big number, $590 million. That's how much of pension funds stolen by Robert Maxwell from his Mirror Group publishing company went missing after his mysterious 1991 death. A presumed drowning after falling from his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine, into the sea off the Canary Islands. Just happens to be that he died on the boat, huh? Another person who just happened to commit suicide. Around Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and the rest of these scoundrels. They really think we're that stupid. Now, I don't have any evidence that Robert Maxwell didn't commit suicide. But when you look at all of the evidence that's lined up, and you look at the players on the stage, do you really think that it's beyond any of these people to clip somebody like Maxwell out at sea if they think he's going to rat on them or expose a plan or if he has outlived his usefulness? That's what these people do. Intelligence agencies burn assets all of the time, folks. The podcast raises questions about where his money got off to after he died, since it's never been recovered. At the time of his August 2019 death by suicide, Epstein's assets totaled $578 million, and Ghislaine Maxwell had $20 million to her name at the time of her July arrest, according to prosecutors. So, remember what Epstein told everybody, right? He was a forensic accountant, basically, who worked for the government, who went and recovered money for the United States government. We know that he was a prolific money launderer. And we know that he had many front companies where he could stash this money. Now, Robert Maxwell's money still has never been found. You mean to tell me that it's out of the realm of possibility that Jeffrey Epstein somehow took control of that $590 million and did Lord only knows what with it? Not out of the realm of possibility in my book, especially considering that none of that money was in the bank, none of that money was anywhere where the government could seize it. And now remember, folks, we're not dealing with average people here. We're dealing with people who are locked into the world of spycraft and intrigue. And guys like Robert Maxwell, for as repugnant as they are, they know their shit. And if you think for a minute that Robert Maxwell went to his grave leaving none of that money around for the operation or for his kids, well, you're being very naive. The new episode, Broken, Seeking Justice, seeks to unravel the tangled mystery surrounding Ghislaine Maxwell, who's often been referred to as Epstein's alleged madam. Maria Farmer, an alleged Epstein survivor, told the podcast she would drive around Manhattan's Central Park with Maxwell in the 90s, scouting for models. Maxwell, Farmer said, would jump out of the car and invite girls back to Epstein's sprawling mansion to audition. And we've heard from Maria about all of this stuff, and how she used to call them nubiles, and how mean she was, and the sort of character that she possessed. This is a woman who was obviously reared in a world of intrigue. Farmer, who worked the front desk at the mansion, would sometimes see those girls come in and told the podcast she witnessed a couple of the girls crying as they left. In a November 2019 civil lawsuit against Epstein's estate, Farmer claims Epstein and Maxwell assaulted her at his New Mexico ranch in 1996 and describes the grooming and recruiting tactics allegedly used by the duo. It all goes into it, right? These are all tactics that these sort of cells, these intelligence cells, teach you. They teach you how to procure assets. In this case, those assets, it's disgusting to even say, were little girls and girls. And they were used as bait, basically, for this blackmail operation. As of Wednesday, Maxwell is awaiting trial in a Brooklyn federal lockup on charges of enticing and transporting minors as part of Epstein's alleged sex ring, along with committing perjury during her 2016 depositions that are part of a defamation case filed by another alleged survivor, Virginia Roberts, to which she entered a not guilty plea and denied all previous allegations. So, one thing that I've always wondered here is, how is it that R. Kelly gets hit with violations of the Mann Act, but Ghislaine Maxwell isn't facing Mann Act violations here? At least not in this original set of charges. Now, as you all know, I believe that there will be a superseded indictment, and I think that more charges are going to follow. But I don't understand how she is not in violation of the Mann Act. Tangent. At a 1992 Manhattan party for Ghislaine Maxwell's mother, Betty Maxwell, rumors flew that Epstein liked schoolgirls, and Ghislaine Maxwell was helping him find them, with none of the wealthy socialites in attendance questioning it, the podcast says, citing former friend and journalist Christopher Mason. So, look, folks, that's just a little bit more of the origin story of Ghislaine Maxwell, right? Now, I might be completely wrong. Again, this is my working hypothesis here. I don't have tangible evidence to prove this. I can't give you bank statements or anything like that. All I have to go on is what we know so far, and by putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And when you start to put those pieces of the puzzle together, it's rather obvious, at least to me, that Robert Maxwell was a big part of getting Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell together and putting this whole entire operation into play. If you'd like to contact me, you could do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All right, folks, all of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. I will be back later on, and we will pick this conversation up then. I hope everybody has a fantastic afternoon.